Alright, so hello one and all, welcome back to another Mushoku Tensei episode review where I go over the anime, manga, and light novel to talk about all the differences and everything that the anime skipped. And so there's a lot of notes that I have to go through today, meaning that there's quite a bit of differences for this episode. So, without further ado, because this is already going to take me so long, let's start off with the anime with episode 10, The Value of a Life and the First Job. So the episode starts off with Eris fighting off a pack of Pax coyotes, and Rudeus complains that she's just killing way too many of them and he wants to kill some for himself, but standing on the corpses of her enemies she goes, "Huh? What? Did you say something?" And that night they eat the prey that they hunted, and Eris just loves the whole situation while Rudeus just wants some beef and rice. But the next day they make it to just before some mountains that act as the divide between them and the city of Rikarisu. And as they try to enter the gate at the foot of this mountain, they notice the vast variety of demons, and many of which are seemingly related to animals, like goats, lizards, cats, etc. And they also find that security has been extra tight for whatever reason, but supposedly there's been sightings of Dead End in the area. And Dead End is Ruijerd. And so trying to figure out a way to get Ruijerd into the city, Rudeus notices some strange looking dye kind of substance on the ground. So Rudeus dyes Ruijerd's hair blue and gives him the Meagard pendant to make him look like a Meagard, and they make their way into the city, which is beaming with life, much like Roa was. However, instead of stalls of valuable materials and high-grade food, it's just bugs and rags, and instead of humans, it's a bunch of demons. And at one of the stalls, Rudeus does end up buying a cloak kind of thing for Eris, which happens to have little cat ears on it. But Rudeus says that they need to head into the Adventurers Guild to earn money, and Eris is just ecstatic. She can't wait, and so as they enter the guild, there are people arm wrestling, bar fights, you name it. And Rudeus marches in there with an eye patch on and like gelled hair, yelling at everyone that they should be scared, for they have with them, from the super tribe, Dead End himself. Then everybody just proceeds to laugh and says that supers have green hairs, not blue, so I guess the disguise worked. But Rudeus then signs them up as a party, as the triple-breasted, green-skinned, mommy-dommy clerk helps them out. And naming their party Dead End, they start out as an F-rank party and can only accept jobs one rank above their own. And Eris drags Rudeus over to the job boards and yells so like matter-of-factly that she can't read it. Like she kind of just stands there going, what am I reading? But Rudeus finds a posting and notes that monster hunting jobs are ranked C or higher, meaning that they can't accept them yet. And then some horse jerk shows up and says that he'll give them some advice, and he thinks that they should take a lost cat job posting. The horse says that since Ruijerd is a super, he'd be able to find the cat in no time, and everybody then starts to laugh. As Rudeus, Eris, and Ruijerd begin to walk away, some frog jerk tries to trip Ruijerd, but he just gives him a total death stare and the guy pulls his foot back. Eris is a little annoyed that they didn't take any requests, but Rudeus says that that was what they wanted to do. They didn't want to accept any, because their only goal right there was to make sure that Ruijerd wasn't feared. Instead, they just laughed at him. And so because it's starting to become nighttime, there are gems on the sides of the mountains that surround Rikarisu that glow a blue radiant light. Dead End heads to an inn and books a room for 3. Then while Rudeus is busy booking the rooms, a party of 3 walks up to Eris and tries to talk to her, wanting to eat with her. But the guy gets angry for Eris ignoring him and grabs her cloak. In the struggle, one of the buttons snaps off. And then Eris gets angry and just punches him across the room and starts stomping on him. And she yells at him saying that that's the first piece of clothing that Rudeus had ever bought in her. And after Rudeus pulls her off of the guy, Rudeus heals him and tells him that his party's name is Dead End. He's still trying to spread the word, but the 3 introduce themselves as Kurt, Bachiro, and Gablin. Together they are the Tokubaru Toughs, and they say that they'll make it big one day. Sure. But because Eris is sad about her cloak being damaged, Rudeus says that he'll be able to fix it tomorrow. However, partially because he bought that for her, they're running quite low on money. And so it costs 5 stone coins a night, and E and F jobs aren't enough to make that money back. But then that night, Rudeus has a dream and is face to face with Hitogami once again. Hitogami gloats about how helpful his advice was, but just wanting to return to reality and out of his old body, Rudeus just tells Hitogami to spit out the next bit of advice so he can leave. But Hitogami's like, whoa, calm down, okay, I'll tell you. Just, what you need to do is take that lost cat posting. But then Rudeus wakes up, and it's still the middle of the night, but for some reason he finds Eris sitting at the foot of her bed looking out of the window. Eris says that she's worried about not being able to make it home and hopes that Ghislaine and her grandfather are alright. Rudeus tries to reassure her of all of her worries before we cut to the next day after they've already accepted the job. Ruijerd leads them down an alleyway and questions if they're even going the right way, but Ruijerd assures them that they are, because the ground shows signs of struggle, which, I guess they do? I don't know. I mean, if the Superd says so, I believe it, but I don't know. But they soon find an entrance to some cellar that has a huge stank and is apparently filled with living creatures. In the cellar are cages of lions, tigers, and panthers, and so it's a little bit more than just a kitty that they were supposed to find. And so when the job said a lost cat, they were thinking like a cat, not like a literal panther. But just then, after Dead End explored the little cellar, 3 others started to come down the stairs after them. A bug guy, Roman, a lizard guy, Jalil, and a shy bee girl, Visuel. Roman doesn't like this job and asks Jalil if he can find them something better. Just then, Rudeus uses Quagmire on them and pins the 3 of them to the wall. Eris and Rudeus kind of just praise their teamwork on restraining the demons, and Rudeus begins to interrogate Roman before getting kicked in the gut. And just then, with barely a sound, Ruijerd makes his move and Roman's head falls off. Eris isn't overly fazed by this and kind of just gives a huff before looking away, but Rudeus is just totally shaken up and he asks Ruijerd why he killed them. And Ruijerd simply responds with, because he hurt a child. Rudeus tells him that he shouldn't kill anybody because it'll ruin the reputation of the Superds. Ruijerd doesn't really understand, but Rudeus says that even if they're evil, people will only care about who killed them. And because Rudeus is mad at Ruijerd, Eris then gets mad at Ruijerd and says that it's his attitude which is why people don't like him. Which, not exactly true, but I guess a little bit. But Rudeus tells Ruijerd to never kill again, because he doesn't want to start fearing him. But realizing that they're dealing with a real super, the 2 demons explain why they kidnap pets. And so when somebody posts a lost pet job, they find it for the reward. And Ruijerd reaffirms that they are villains and is ready to kill them before Rudeus steps in and asks if they're adventurers. It turns out that they're both D rank and could go up a rank if they wanted to, but they don't rank up because they want to continue to take E rank pet jobs. Rudeus tells the 2 that if they want to live, they'll have to team up with him. And Ruijerd is insanely pissed off right now, and he says that he'd rather ruin the reputation of the Superds than work with people who are villains. Eris then punches Ruijerd and demands that he lets go of Rudeus, and she tells Ruijerd that Rudeus is doing everything that he can for the both of them, and so who cares if they team up with some people who kidnap a couple pets. Ruijerd says that Roman kicked a child, and Eris starts to kick Ruijerd and says that she kicks people too, so what's the problem? And Ruijerd then argues that evil is just evil, but Eris retorts and says that she did a lot of bad stuff in the past too, but she's not evil. Eris keeps wailing on him and says that they don't need him and that she and Rudeus can just make it on their own if he doesn't want to join. Ruijerd, after a moment of silence, says that a super will never go back on their word and will get them home. And so at this, I guess he's turning a blind eye to the evil. But a little bit later, Roman raises his party, P Hunters, rank up to C, and Rudeus tells them to take B rank slaying jobs starting tomorrow. Dead End will take an F rank job, and so basically they'll be switching jobs. And whenever P Hunters finishes a job, they'll have to attribute it to Dead End to make them look good. Nokopara, the horse guy, kind of just shows up acting all sus and makes fun of the 2 parties before he kind of just heads out. And that's pretty much the anime. So yeah, a lot of development, a lot of, so we got some tension between Rudeus and Ruijerd, which is a little concerning, but things will end up all well in the end, I'm sure. And so let's just move right along to the manga. So the manga starts us off with the group seemingly have just killed a great tortoise and are currently eating its meat. And Rudeus states that it's been 3 days since they were at the Meagard's village, and since it was only a 3-hour walk from there from where they initially landed from the Meagard's village, that means barely any time has passed. Why did I write this in my notes? But the gang soon arrives at Rikarisu City, and Rudeus gets Ruijerd into a disguise, but not with the blue dye. Rather, he makes a stone helmet for him to wear and wraps a spear up and hugs a Pax Coyote skin around him. He looks like a menace. But the way that they explained it to the guards is that they found a cursed helmet and it couldn't allow them to take it off of the user. And so the guards kind of just laugh at them. But as they enter the city, Rudeus buys some dye and enters the Adventurer Guild with Royce Migurdia, Ruijerd's new codename. They create their party, Dead End, and as they leave, Perutoko, the frog guy, tries to trip Ruijerd but ends up falling off the chair himself. But Nokopara goes up to him and says that it's not cool to pick on the newbies anymore. Like, scram, dude. Get out of here, you frog. So he's totally a great guy. But after Dead End leaves the guild, Ruijerd asks if that was really a success or not, but Eris assures him that everything is fine because Rudy is just wonderful. And Ruijerd apologizes for questioning him and goes to pat Rudeus on the head before he retracts his hand and bows instead. Rudeus thinks to himself that Eris puts all of her faith in him, and even Ruijerd bowed down to him, so he will not break their trust. Sure, bud. See how that goes. But we cut to Eris in the Wolf Claws Inn, which is where they're staying, as she bathes herself, thinking about the past. A few years ago, she and Ghislaine bathed in the hot springs together, and Eris seemed down, and so Ghislaine asked her what's wrong. She's like, "What? Wish you had tatas like these?" And Eris goes, "Oh, don't worry, I am my mother's daughter. Just with her walking alone, the tops of her boobs just jiggle. And so don't worry, in that department, I'm going to grow up fine." But what has Eris down is that she's questioning her own strength. Ghislaine says that there's nothing to worry about and that she's an advanced swordsman and Rudeus is strong as well. Together, the two of them would make a really balanced team. But Eris gets up and spins around and says that it'll be fun to explore labyrinths with Rudeus and Ghislaine, but Ghislaine then says that she won't be around forever. And if they ever separated, Eris must protect Rudeus. And now, back in the present, Eris, nearly crying, is depressed about actually being separated from Ghislaine and wonders if she'll ever see her again. And on top of that, she doesn't even know if she's strong enough to protect Rudeus. But it's noted that Rudeus bought her the cloak to hide her red hair, so then all the attention goes straight to Ruijerd. And so she doesn't exactly understand what's going on. I mean, she gets an idea of what's happening, but all she knows is that if she puts on the cloak, Rudeus will be happy about it. And so she does, and she heads out of the bathroom after changing and greets Rudeus as she gives a happy nod. But Rudeus kind of just turns away and carries on with something else. She thought that he'd ask her about the hood or something, how much she likes wearing it, but nothing. Eris, clearly looking depressed, Rudeus asks what's wrong, and that's when Kurt shows up, asking for her to join his party. But Eris then ignores him, and then Kurt grabs the back of her hood and accidentally rips it at, like, the seam here. Eris once again beats him to a pulp and says that it's the first piece of clothing that Rudeus had ever bought her, and after Rudeus pulls her off, she storms away saying that she doesn't know what anybody's saying, and that they're all talking at once and they treat her like a child, and Rudeus didn't even notice her hood and that she's separated from Ghislaine, and she just starts to cry and jumps onto her bed. She's like having just a full-on panic attack right now. And with a little push from Ruijerd, Rudeus does apologize to her and tells her that everything will be fine. They'll get home safe and they'll be reunited with their family in no time. Just leave everything to him. With a smile, she grabs Rudeus' hand and gives it a squeeze. So just right there, very different tone from Eris' character. And I think I've said this before. I feel like this kind of topic has been brought up again in the manga and light novel, but the anime really does not show Eris' anxiety, like, at all. Like, Eris is depressed, she is anxious, she doesn't know what's happening around her. Like, she's trying to enjoy this, but in reality, she's in pain. And so what happens at the end of season 1 makes so much more sense when you realize this is Eris. The Eris that you see in the anime, it's barely even her. It's what everyone else sees, but we actually get the inner monologue from her. I mean, maybe that's intentional. Maybe there's a chance that we'll be getting like a 6-episode spin-off of Eris, because we do have the Eris guide in manga, which does follow Eris after the events of season 1, but it would be interesting to see the anime just expand upon all that and go back to certain moments like these and just show Eris's actual anxiety in just a short couple episode OVAs. That would be nice, because I feel like anime fans need to see this. But that is partially why I'm making these videos, because there's so much more character and depth, even in the manga, which people love to hate. But this is why I defend the manga. It has moments like these that just make it so amazing. But after Rudeus falls asleep, he meets with our great friend Hitogami, and he tells Rudeus to take the pet quests if he's in need of money. Rudeus wakes up and he swears to himself that he'll do whatever it takes to keep Eris safe and to save the Superd's name. However, before we continue with the main story, there's a couple things that we have to go through. Not only do we have to go through a Sylphie side story, but also there's a Roxy interlude chapter that we'll go through. So for now, let's just go through Sylphie's story to see what she's been up to, kind of. So this is Sylphie's side story called So we start this off with the troubadour singing about a song from the past, which so technically means that this story takes place in the future, but the song that she's singing about takes place just about 3 days ago in terms of where Rudeus and co are. But she sings a song about a tale. After a fated meeting, they inevitably departed. It's the song of the green-haired girl that I shall now sing. And we cut to Sylphie bringing her father, Laws, his lunch, with the troubadours there. So I guess Troubadour from the past is there just sitting with Laws, talking with him at work. But the troubadour greets Sylphie, and it seems like that they're pretty familiar with each other. And as soon as Sylphie showed up, she's immediately departing for her lesson. But the troubadour says that Sylphie's so cute, but I was surprised when I saw her hair color. And Laws is like, yeah, I know, she used to be bullied over that back in the day. But thanks to that one boy, it all stopped. Laws is very grateful to Rudeus, the boy that he's obviously talking about. And he explains that to Sylphie, Rudeus is like a god. And so the other day, Sylphie said that she wanted to send him something. And so when Laws and her talked about their family's traditional good luck charm for happiness, she immediately went to making one of her own. And so that's the little wooden charm that we see in a few episodes from now. And so the troubadour's like, oh, how cute. Oh, that's so amazing. I bet her head must be filled with thoughts of him. And that's kind of where the problem lies. There's a little bit too much thoughts of Rudeus in Sylphie's head, and she's become dependent on him. And because of that, it hindered both of their growths, and so that's why Paul sent Rudeus away, so that they could be separated. And the troubadour is like, oh, that sudden separation must have been horrible, but I'm sure she's doing well now, right? And Laws is like, not really. When Rudeus left, her reaction was like, he was sold by the nobles? And she goes to run to, like, save him, basically. But Laws is like, no, stop, like, girl, like, kid, child. He's fine. You can't go after him. He tells Sylphie that he left the village to grow stronger, and Sylphie's like, what? Rudy doesn't need to get any stronger. He's already strong enough to protect me. And Laws kind of just yells at her and asks her, do you plan on being protected forever? And she just couldn't answer the question, and she starts to break down and cry. She was so dependent on him that she even needed him to think for herself. Again, it's sad, like that's kind of concerning because that's similar to what Eris talks about, how she relies on Rudeus so much, and it's like, oh my goodness. Rudeus just loves to emotionally manipulate people to horrible degrees, but this isn't about Eris. Laws does say, though, that after that, Sylphie did try and do things on her own, like learn magic and sword playing and all that stuff. The troubadour goes, oh, well, I see this was a critical situation for her. It'll be good if she can find her own way, but I wonder how it'll turn out. And now this troubadour is just so suspicious. Who is the troubadour? I don't know. I think it's a manga-only character. I don't recall them being in the anime or light novel. And so it's like, are they important at all? Will they show up in the sequel or something? Because they do end up talking about in a minute, like, how it feels like they've been alive for a while. And so I wonder if there will ever be, like, plot significance to them, or if this is just a, like, an excuse to tell these extra stories, because I'm not even sure if half of these are even true, and I'll get to that in a bit. But now cutting back to Sylphie, she's like counting on her fingers the things that she needs to do today. And so she's like, so now I have to go see Rudy's house to learn manners from Lilia, etiquette, which explains why she was dancing with Lilia at some point earlier. And then she's like, after that, then there's magic practice and then sword practice. She's like, man, it's really been 3 years since I've departed, like Rudeus and I have separated. She starts to wonder what Rudeus is up to now, and none of the other Grey Rats will tell her. And so she thinks, like, man, he must be super strong now. He's probably made so many more friends. Some of them are going to be girls, aren't they? And then she thinks back into the past when she was like, I don't know, like 3 or 2 or something, as her father and mother are telling her a bedtime story about this princess. And so, long, long ago, there was a princess who was bullied by an evil witch. She was saved by the gallant prince who appeared riding a white horse. Then the two of them got married and lived a long and happy life. That is a short-ass story, but to Sylphie, she was the princess and Rudeus was the prince that saved her. And this is the reason why she would believe that one day she'd marry Rudeus and that he'd be able to protect her forever. But then she starts to think, what if Rudeus doesn't feel the same way? What if Rudeus and another girl are together now? And we see Eris with like this jet black skin with this like devil smile, like holding on to Rudeus. And then she asks, what if Rudy has forgotten all about me? And her like image kind of just shatters. But then she kind of just shakes her head going, no, there's no way. Can't be true. But then she thinks back to when her father told her that she can't be protected her whole life, and she just doesn't know. Like, she says, I thought that a wife would always be protected. I don't know anything other than that. Help me, Rudeus. And it's then when the troubadour shows up again, holding a child in her arm. As they yell to drop him and leave. But basically, she's holding Samal, who's in need of a medic because something happened to his knee. Samal, when he sees Sylphie, he's like, oh, it's you demon. And Sylphie's like, no, I'm not a demon. Don't call me that. I told you already. She's a lot more assertive now. But the troubadour is like, oh, you two are friends? Oh, that's sweet. And she's like, no, we are absolutely not friends. But Sylphie asks, like, what are you doing with Somal? But then she goes on and sings like, it began with a bunch of 3 bad boys from the village. In a test of courage, they entered the forest where they encountered some monsters, and they were injured and crying when Laws came to their aid. On top of that, the village gatekeeper Laws toppled the monsters that attacked. And she just like goes on and on and on. But then Sylphie goes to try and heal Somal before he slaps her hand away. And this is where she like gets really mad. She's like, I am telling you over and over again, I am not a demon, I'm just worried about you, so just let me heal you, you son of a bitch. And so she forcibly heals Somal, and he's like, oh shit, my knee's better again. Sylphie asks if Somal feels any more pain. He's like, no, not really. And she's like, oh, really? I'm so glad. And all 3 of the boys are kind of like, female. And then he's like, thank you. And she's like, what was that? What did you say? She's really cocky now. But then Somal tells her to shut up, and it doesn't mean that he's accepted her for not being a demon. But then Sylphie's just like, oh my god, geez, those boys. But then the troubadour kind of leans over and it's like, oh, so is that silent spell casting you just did there? And Sylphie's like, what? Oh, yeah, no, I know how to do that. Rudeus taught me. She's like, oh, wow, I've traveled with so many magic-using children up until now, but none could use voiceless spells. The troubadour compliments Sylphie's teacher for being, like, powerful, and he compliments her as well for being able to do it herself. And then she says, surely you'll be able to protect many people and you'll become an excellent wizard. And Sylphie's like, me? Protect people? What? And so she's like, wait, so does this mean that, like, I could protect the people I love? She's like, oh, well, only time will tell, but if you are with that special person, you could have a face that looks like this. And she gives a really creepy smile. And Sylphie's, like, thankful for, I guess, the advice or whatever the troubadour said. And the troubadour's like, oh, no, thank you. I now have lots of material for my next song. The angel, Sylphie. The troubadour tells Sylphie to take care as she takes her leave, and Sylphie bows down and thanks her. And then Sylphie thinks to herself, Rudy, oh Rudy, I was able to help someone with magic you taught me. To think a bullied child like me would be of some use to someone. And Rudy, I finally understand. I'm not a fairy tale princess. Just being protected is not good enough. Good enough to be able to protect Rudy. That is how strong I need to be. And we have to protect each other. If we can get to that point, we'll be able to stay with each other forever. And so she says how much of a different person she is. And she thinks about like, oh, Rudy, if you could see me, what would you think of me now? And she has an image of her head of like Rudeus holding her close going, oh, Sylphie, you're such a wonderful person. Let's get married. And she just holds her face all smiling with her ears flapping. And then she's like, no, I can't lose momentum here. I have to work hard to become more charming. But then a blinding light kind of shines in her face as the Mana displacement incident happens. And as she covers her face, the text bubbles are going like, hey, Rudy, I'll work harder. So the next time we meet, the next time together. And we don't get to see like what she's saying because the text box is literally breaking apart and shattering as the Fidoa region around it does as well. It's just so cool. And so that is the side story, Angel. And so just where was Sylphie teleported to? Well, we don't know yet, but we will find out probably one day, I would assume. But we're still not back to the main story because we now have to jump 6 months into the future to Roxy. Roxy arrives at the Fidoa region and finds that it's been completely destroyed by the teleportation incident. And I already went over the main contents of this back in my episode 8 review, where the light novel actually already covered this scene. But what's interesting is that the manga actually goes into more detail and extends the scenes a little bit. So after Roxy arrives and checks with the status of the Grey Rats, finding them to be alive, she reads Paul's note. After she reads the note, she actually meets Talend and Elenalize. Realizing that they're also acquaintances of Paul, they explain that they were in Fangs of the Black Wolf and that Talend, a dwarf, is an S-rank advanced level magician, while Elenalize Dragonroad, an elf, is an S-rank warrior. Together, now that they've been acquainted with a demon, Roxy, they can now head off to the demon continent to search, because otherwise they just wouldn't really know where to go. Now, this is only an assumption, but I'm going to take a guess that it'll take them about half a year to reach the Westport from Fidoa, which we do see them do. Once we get shots of Roxy and everything, the timeline seems to match up. And I only kind of bring this up because it's stated to take 3 times as long to travel through the demon continent than it does compared to the central continent. This is due to the demon continent's terrible terrain, basically. And I'm jumping ahead of myself a little bit right here, but it takes Dead End 1 year to travel across the demon continent to reach the West Port. This means that in only 4 months, possibly even less, with 2 rank adventurers by Roxy's side, they make it to Eastport, on their way to the Millis continent. From there, with Millis being half the size of the central continent, using simple math, it should only take them 2 months to travel across. And then they'd make it to the Windport. And so to sum up Roxy's journey since the teleportation incident, it took her about 6 months to make it to the Sharone Kingdom to the Fidoa region, which kind of makes sense because she really has to do a big loop, and she was probably taking her time, really. And then now with Elenalize and Talend, it'll take a 4-month journey to go across the central continent, finishing off with a 2-month journey across the Millis continent to reach the Windport. That equals up to be exactly 1 year since the teleportation incident, which lines up perfectly with when Rudeus's Dead End party reaches the Windport. The point is, the author, Rifujin Namaganote, he knows what he's doing. This is like One Piece levels of preparation. And now we can cut back to the present of K417 during springtime, 4 days after Rudeus's birthday. But we come back to Dead End as they search for the cat, and as Rudeus and Eris praise Ruijerd for his third eye, he gives them a silent pat on the head. And according to the client, Miss Micelle, Me the cat is about this big. So it's a child doing that. She's kind of just extending her arms, and so they just think it's a big cat, right? But they then enter the cellar to find out a whole bunch of animals with tags and collars on them, and a giant black panther with a little bow on its tail and a collar that reads Me. So it's a little bit more than this big. It's kind of this big. If only children had longer arms, that would make things a bit easier. But the gang then restrains P. Hunter, and Ruijerd kills Roman, and with blood splattered on Rudeus' face, he starts to have a panic attack and realizes that Roxy was kind of right, that there is a difference between demons and human mindsets. For just kicking a child, Ruijerd thought that Roman deserved death. But from here, the situation goes pretty similar to how it does in the anime, except Ruijerd and Rudeus' argument takes place outside, above the cellar. After it's all resolved, they head back to their client, Micelle, who is a small lizard-looking child, and it said that she was scared when she first heard the name Dead End, but believed that they would get Me back. And so with only 1 scrap iron coin earned, Rudeus realizes that they'll have to do a lot more to earn money. And so now, we're back to Roxy. Hooray! We're cutting back into the future with Roxy on their way to the Windport as she gets seasick. Talking with one of the crewmates on the ship, he asks if she's looking for someone just like he is. So I guess he knows someone that's also been a victim of the teleportation incident. But looking over the edge of the boat, Roxy then vomits just all over the place. And so carrying her to the bed, the man says that his kid is about her age, thinking that she's like 10 or so. And he says that he hopes that Roxy finds who she's looking for. But then we cut to some time later with Elenalize dragging Roxy through the marketplace as she hits on guys, and Roxy says that it's not fair for Talend to do all of the work while those two kind of just slack off. But Elenalize just doesn't care. And Roxy also recalls that Elenalize had just slept with a man this morning, but she's still, I guess, hungry for more. But in Elenalize's defense, she claims that it's her curse that forces her to do what she has to do. But also, Elenalize does claim that she's able to learn a lot of information that gets passed around in bed. And so with that, Roxy's like, oh, so did you actually find out some information from the guy that you slept with? And no, I guess Elenalize wasn't listening. The only thing that she got was railed. No information. But then Alina says that Roxy needs to loosen up a bit and just find a guy, maybe like Paul's kid Rudeus. And Roxy kind of freaks out a bit and asks if she's only saying that because she's interested in Rudeus. However, with a disgusted face, Alina says, "Ew, don't even joke about that with me. Me and Paul's son?" But Alina then buys some fish as Roxy buys a crepe. Talking with the chef, Marie, she looks to be about a young girl, with the shop owner next to them saying that they were a victim of the teleportation incident, and they are eternally grateful for her assistance since she's finally able to bring sweets to the demon continent. Alina says that it's so wholesome that a familial bond can surpass race, and Roxy questions if Alina is even capable of feeling things like that, and in response she actually says that she's a mother, which, I mean, I guess isn't too surprising. Alina is probably a mother to many people. But Roxy then says how much she loves sweets, and then wind blows as Roxy's skirt kind of flips up as it allows Marie to see her holy relic. And in embarrassment, Roxy grabs Alina, who remains frozen eating the fish as she's kind of just dragged through the air like a statue. However, just as Roxy fled the scene, a man holding a crate looks over at her, and then at the food stall where she sees her, his daughter, that was displaced in the teleportation incident. The daughter is Marie, and so the crewmate had finally reunited with his daughter as they were blessed by the Panty goddess. But thanks to Marie, Roxy realizes that if this girl can adapt to the demon continent, then surely Rudy can as well. But speaking of which, we then cut back a year, back to when Rudeus is dealing with P Hunters. And so Dead End and P Hunters go about their job switches, and just in a few days, Dead End rises to D rank. And the two parties actually end up getting along pretty well, and Jalila and Visquel are doing their quest legitimately to their surprise. And it's not until by the end of the chapter that Ruijerd actually accepts that they might have done bad things in the past, but they aren't bad people themselves, kind of like he is. But just as they were conversing, Nokopara shows up acting all sus and stuff like he normally does, before Rudeus is able to kind of shoo him off by saying that P Hunters have just been helping them out since they're newbies. Eris does note, since that she doesn't really have to focus on hearing things, she's kind of been looking around a lot more, and she notices that Nokopara has been looking at them anytime they enter the guild. And so he's watching them for some reason, but what we do actually skip in the anime for some reason is them buying new equipment and gear. Eris gets a new chestplate, which Rudeus got her to get one a size up because she's a growing woman. And she's like, what? No, it's all loose and stuff, and like, it's just not, it doesn't fit me right. But then he kind of, once again, emotionally manipulated her into buying it because it makes her look like a great warrior with it on. And so she's like, oh shit, really? Okay, I'll buy it. Yeah, this is great. But then in return, she gets him a magician's robe. But the one that they get is actually one meant for hobbits, but it's noted to be quite sturdy, and it'll even handle like the variety of magic that Rudeus uses. It won't get torn up too easily. But from there, because things have kind of been tense between Rudeus and Ruijerd, he gets the three of them matching metal headbands and gives one to him. And so that is the manga. There is a lot there. Normally the manga takes like maybe 20 minutes at most, usually. This is a 40-minute section that I've been recording for 40 minutes just for the manga. There's a lot here. And so a lot of different side stories and just a lot of extra scenes with them buying gear and everything, which we never get to see in the anime. I don't think so anyway. Maybe we do. But that is quite a bit for the manga. A lot of additions, not too many changes. Although there still is some. But because the light novel still has a lot more changes to go through, let's get straight to that. So just as the gang departed from the meagered village, it's stated that it's going to be a 3-day trip to Rikarisu City. And it's quite evident that Ruijerd will be a valuable asset on their journey home. He knew the routes, the strategies to survive, and obviously knew how to kill monsters. For example, how would you go about finding fire in the middle of a rocky desert? Well, you'd burn the corpses of monsters. It took some convincing, but Rudeus got Ruijerd to admit that they were more than just children, that they were warriors, and that they were allowed to fight as well. The main reason why Rudeus wanted to fight monsters along the way is because what if anything were to happen to Ruijerd? They'd be dead within days without any proper training. The first monster they fought was a stone treant. For the most part, treants were tree-like monsters, but there were many varieties to them that we've briefly seen and mentioned in the past. We have the lesser treants, which is found all over the world. They're basically mutated saplings that turn into normal-looking trees that attack anybody that gets close to them. These things were pretty much weak enough that an adult with no real training could kill without any problem. However, if the lesser treant was able to survive long enough and able to absorb nutrients from the fairy fountains located at the Great Forest, it would turn into an elder treant. These fountains in the Great Forest allow these monsters to use a variety of water spells. Old treants are basically massive trees that get mutated. Zombie treants are trees that transformed from a withered tree. And so the point is there's a lot of different treants. And although there are differences between them, their main traits stay the same. They act as a mimic tree and attack anybody that gets close to them. And they're able to reproduce by seeds that grow into more treants. The stone treant is a bit of a special case, however, because it isn't actually a rock, but rather it's just a regular treant that got mutated into a monster while it was still a seed. In that seed form, it kept growing and growing into a large boulder-sized seed that would only transform into a treant once someone got close. Ruijerd says that in order to harvest this for firewood, Rudeus can't use fire magic, because it would just burn it, obviously, and he can't use water magic because it would make the wood damp. So clearly, to Ruijerd, this thing was no more than just a living piece of lumber. So Rudeus thought that he might get some training in. And so with Eris in the front lines and him in the rear, they decided to work as a team to take it down. Eris's plan was to weaken the monster with his magic and let Eris finish it off. So he conducts a spell in his mind. Projectile, bullet-shaped rock. Toughness, as hard as possible. Shape, snub-nosed with multiple grooves. Modifications, high-speed rotation. Size, slightly larger than a man's fist. And velocity, as fast as possible. He fired off a stone cannon only hoping that it would wound the monster, but instead it absolutely obliterated it and blew it to smithereens. And Eris, pissed that Rudeus ruined her first real fight, yells at him while Ruijerd questions him what he just did. Apparently in the 500 plus years of Ruijerd being alive, he wasn't too familiar with silent spellcasters. But throughout the day until sunset, they fought 4 battles since. They fought a second stone treant, a great tortoise, an acid wolf, and a group of Pax coyotes. The great tortoise was slain by Ruijerd in just a single strike to the skull, and acid wolves are large wolves that just spit some kind of acid from their mouths. There was only one, so Eris dealt with that in a single strike, although it was far less graceful. Her victory was pretty cut short by its blood just being splattered all over her. So for as much as a tomboy as she is, she still is grossed out by blood getting all over her. At least for now, anyway. But then there's the Pax coyotes. These come in packs of 20 or so, but could be rarely found in larger packs as well. The thing is, they aren't like your regular pack animal. Instead, they multiply like amoeba. They can't duplicate in the midst of battle, but rather once every few months they'll kind of just... And so if you leave them alone for long enough, they can grow into a massive pack. And so their strength doesn't lie within themselves, but rather their numbers and extreme coordination. For the most part, with minimal assistance from Ruijerd, Eris was able to take them all on by herself. So Pax coyote pelts can be sold for a good bit of money, but before Rudeus helped to collect them, he tended to Eris's wounds and wiped the blood off of her face. And so he notes that the training with Ghislaine really did pay off, and Ruijerd even says that one day Eris could become a master swordswoman. And hearing that, she kind of just jumped in the air all ecstatic and her face shining with joy. And despite this kind of being her first real battle, she wasn't really fazed about killing things. Practice like you play and play like you practice, as they say. But after battle practice came camping practice. According to Ruijerd, Great Tortoise actually tastes pretty good, but when Rudeus tried it, he really hated it. So I guess the quality isn't that good on the Demon Continent. However, Eris is having a good time and she just loves the tough meat, and it's like a fantasy to her thanks to all of Ghislaine's stories. But Ruijerd says that at the end of each day you must care for your weapons and perform maintenance necessary on them. Because Ruijerd's spear wasn't made of steel and Eris's was forged in such a way, neither of them could rust. However, if you kept dried blood on them, the edges would dull and it would attract more monsters. But Rudeus was curious as to just what Ruijerd's spear was. It was pure white, unornamented, and looked like it was made out of a single substance without any seams. And Ruijerd says that it's made from their soul. As they're born, Superds are born with a 3-pointed tail, and it grew with them until it stiffened and broke off. However, despite being separated from them, it still was a part of their body, and the more that they used it, the sharper and deadlier it would become. Eventually, these things could become unbreakable, and capable of piercing through basically anything. And with how much Ruijerd has been through, his spear is probably harder and sharper than any other Superds out there. And so after about 3 days of travel, they made it to Rikarisu City, one of the 3 largest settlements in the Demon Continent. During the Laplace War, Rikarisu was actually the home of the Demon Empress Kishirika Kishirisu and her army. Some still refer to the city as the Old Rikarisu Castle. The city itself is set inside of a massive crater, and in the center of the city lies the ruins of the castle Kishirisu, which remains half destroyed from the events of the Laplace War. Rudeus starts to wonder if they can even enter the city, but then suggests to Ruijerd that they disguise him. And Ruijerd's like, disguise? And Rudeus goes, look, I know it might be against your moral code or whatever, but it'll get us into the city. That is our top priority. But then Ruijerd's like, no, like, what is a disguise? What is that word? And so I guess Ruijerd just legitimately didn't understand the concept of a disguise. So that's interesting. I guess he's never needed to. Or maybe that just isn't a thing in this world, but surely. I think that's just a Ruijerd thing. But making a stone helmet for Ruijerd, they get him into the city, which the city itself might not be as rich and prosperous as Roa, but it's certainly just as lively. And so thanks to advice from the guards, to get money, they decide to head to the Adventurers Guild and create a party so they can do quests. Rudeus's mindset is to get smaller jobs done in order to better the Superd's name, rather than just random monster slaying quests. Plus, saving things like children is right up Ruijerd's alley anyway. But first things first, they need to do something about Ruijerd's disguise, because he can't just walk around for months or whatever, however long they have to, in that helmet. So as they were walking on the marketplace looking for a disguise, Rudeus noticed the difference in what people in the Demon Continent sell versus what they sell in the Central Continent. For example, in the Central Continent, the common mount to travel with were horses, but in the Demon Continent, due to the rough landscapes, the common mount here were giant lizards. Eventually, however, Rudeus does talk to one of the shopkeepers and haggled and manipulated him into giving Rudeus some dye for free while purchasing a hood and some strange lemon things. He then sold their Pax Coyotes and Acid Wolf Fangs for a total of 4 scrap iron coins. In the end, thanks to Rudeus's transaction with the shopkeep and the help from Roxy's parents, they have a total of 1 iron coin, 4 scrap iron coins, and 10 stone coins. And so here's the currency of all the Asura coins and Demon Continent coins for comparison. As I've said before, if you want to convert yen to your currency, if you're like American, Canadian, I believe Australian, or if you use euro, generally just remove 2 zeros from the end. You get a rough kind of conversion to your currency. If you have something that isn't that, I can't help you. But Dead End currently has about 150 yen worth of currency, which isn't a lot. But Rudeus pulls Eris and Ruijerd into an alley to talk about Royce Migurdia, Ruijerd's disguise character. Over like 5 pages of Rudeus barely being able to explain the concept of a disguise, Royce's backstory goes like this. He's a tall meager that found 2 oddly powerful children in the woods and took them in. He always loved the Superds, and so he pretended to be one. And so with Ruijerd pretending to be weak, as he goes about town helping people out, he'll have rumors that spread around him saying like, man, this imposter Superd is really nice. But eventually it'll spread so far, and kind of like a game of telephone where, you know, it kind of gets messed up and distorted. Eventually those rumors should turn into, man, this Superd is pretty nice. But after all that, Rudeus unfolds the hood that he purchased and found out that it's seemingly made for beast folk. He wanted to give it to Eris, but he knew that she hated doing the whole cat ear thing and thought that she'd hate it. But for whatever reason, she happily accepted it. And so from there, they enter the Adventurers Guild, filled with people of many different races and people, those with pig features, mantis claws, butterfly wings, the lower half of a snake or the head of a horse, and the ones who didn't have some kind of animal-like feature were still different in their own regard, while having some with thorns coming out of their shoulders, others with blue skin, and some even with like 4 arms or 2 heads. All of them wore a different variety of clothing, some from heavy clad armor to light magician's robe, and some had axes, staves, swords, or some just fought with their bare fists. But regardless, they were all ready for battle. But then, they all turn their head to the 3 bozos that walk through the door. Rudeus starts the scene, making a mockery of himself as people laugh at Ruijerd. Rudeus then goes up to the receptionist desk to sign up themselves as adventurers, but the desk is like far too tall for him, so he gets Ruijerd to hoist him up and just carry him as he talks to the clerk. But the clerk across the counter had orange hair with a pair of fangs from her mouth. She wore a low-cut top and had 3 breasts, to which Rudeus means 2 times the amount of cleavage, and thinks to himself that is such an efficient innovation. But the clerk gives Rudeus 3 pieces of paper and 3 charcoal sticks. From there, they each fill out a form which goes as follows. 1. Use of the Adventurers Guild. Registering with the Adventurers Guild, the Guild, entitles you the use of its services. 2. Guild Services. Registered adventurers may visit any of our branches, found all over the world, to take on jobs, receive payments for completed work, sell raw materials, and exchange currencies. 3. Your registration record. All information related to your registration with the guild will be recorded exclusively on your adventurer card, for which you are personally responsible. Should your card be lost or damaged, a new one can be issued. However, your rank will be reset to F and a region-specific fee will be imposed. 4. Leaving the guild. Registered adventurers may withdraw from the guild at any branch. Re-registration at a later date is permitted, but your rank will be reset to F. 5. Prohibited conduct. Adventurers are strictly prohibited from violating local laws, taking any action severely prejudicial to the reputation of the guild, obstructing another adventurer from carrying out their tasks, buying or selling guild jobs. Any violation of this policy will result in the assessment of a fine and the revocation of your status as an adventurer. 6. Breach of contract. Any adventurer who fails to complete a job they undertake is required to pay 1/5 of the listed reward as a breach of contract penalty. This fee must be paid in full within half a year. Failure to pay this by the deadline will result in the revocation of your status as an adventurer. 7. Rank. Adventurers are ranked in 7 tiers based on their experience and abilities, beginning with F rank and advancing to S. As a general rule, adventurers can only undertake jobs related within 1 rank of their current rank. 8. Promotion and demotion. By completing a preset number of jobs based on their current rank, adventurers can secure promotion to a higher rank. If an adventurer does not feel ready to take on a higher rank, they may decline the promotion. In addition, failing to complete a certain number of jobs consecutively may result in demotion to a lower rank. 9. Duties and responsibilities. Should the local authorities call for aid in the event of a monster attack or similar crisis, all adventurers are obliged to offer their assistance. In addition, adventurers are expected to obey any orders issued by their local guild in the event of an emergency. And so, by the time Rudeus had finished reading off half of the list, Eris was already getting quite fed up with the whole thing. After reading it out to Eris, Rudeus asks the clerk a couple questions. He wonders, since Eris can only speak the human tongue, if they have to fill out the form in the demon god tongue, to which the clerk does allow them to write it in the human tongue. It seems, however, if it's a more obscure language, that wouldn't be allowed. Something like the heaven god tongue or the sea god tongue, for example. Rudeus then asks if they're allowed to use a fake name. I mean, not that they will, but she does say that you're allowed to if you wanted to. And so in response, Rudeus asks if many criminals would sign up under aliases if that's the case. However, she says that the definition of criminal is different on the demon continent compared to other places. So long as they're not causing trouble for the guild, it isn't really a problem. But if you do cause trouble, you'll have your license revoked. You can't register again, at least not in the demon continent. Despite it being kind of lenient, the naming rule isn't enforced simply due to the fact that many demons aren't named at birth and would prevent many people from even being able to register at all. And so when Rudeus finishes his form, the clerk asks him to place his hand on a transparent board with a magical circle engraved in its center. It's about the size of a, and let me quote, erotic game box. I don't know what the difference between an erotic game box is and a normal one, but it's the size of an erotic game box, I guess. But underneath the board appears to be a small metal card. After placing his hand on the board, the clerk taps a button on its far edge and says, Name, Rudeus Greyrat. Profession, Magician. Rank F. She pressed the button again and the magic circle glowed slightly red for a moment. She then removes the silver card from underneath and hands it to Rudeus. What was before just a regular silver card was now marked with faintly glowing letters that read, Name, Rudeus Greyrat. Sex, male. Race, human. Age, 10. Profession, magician. Rank, F. Interestingly enough, despite having filled out his form in the demon god tongue, his card was still in the human tongue. And Eris and Ruijerd get their cards as well, but Eris's also reads in the human tongue, while Ruijerd's reads in the demon god tongue. The clerk says that the language is registered by the applicant's race, which automatically is identified along with their sex and age. So Ruijerd's card reads, Name, Ruijerd Superia. Sex, male. Race, demon. Age, 566. Profession, warrior. Rank F. And Eris's card reads, Name, Eris Boreas Greyrat. Sex, female. Race, human. Age, 12. Profession, swordswoman. Rank F. So after successfully registering as adventurers, the clerk asks if they'd like to sign up as a party and list them the details. A party can have a maximum of 7 members. Only adventurers within 1 rank of the party's leader can join the party. Your party rank is the average of all of your members' ranks. For rank promotion purposes, all party members receive credit for any jobs completed as a party. Individual party members can still take on jobs independent of the party. To join a party, you need approval from both the party leader and the guild. To leave a party, you only need the approval from the guild. The party leader has the right to eject any member from their party. Should the party leader die, their party is automatically disbanded. 2 or more parties can join together to form a clan. High-performing clans are eligible to receive a variety of special rewards from the guild. Rudeus registers their party as Dead End, and the clerk's face kind of twitches upon hearing it, but she keeps a calm smile. Very professional. But she takes their cards and steps into the back for a moment before returning. Now a new line is added in their cards reading, Party, Dead End, F. The F referring to their overall party rank. With registration finally complete, I know it's a lot, they then head over to the job board. As they do, the frogman, Pertko, sticks his leg out and tries to trip Rudeus, but he steps over it. As Eris tries to do the same thing, he raises his leg up to catch the tip of her toes, and Eris nearly falls down but recovers. Staring daggers at Pertko, she runs around and marches towards Rudeus. But now lastly, it's Ruijerd's turn to step over Pertko's leg, and so he steps over like Eris does, but with his second leg, he raises it higher up so then it catches on Pertko's leg and then flips him backwards. If that makes any sense. And he lands on the ground, and so in rage, he jumps back up and pulls a knife on Ruijerd, and just then Nokopara steps in and gets Pertko to step down. But moving on, Dead End then makes their way to the job listings. As an F-ranked new party, they could only take on jobs ranked F or E, and there weren't many great jobs in those categories. For the most part, they were some pretty mid-tier city jobs. And here are a few examples that we get. F. Task, Warehouse Organizing. Reward, 5 stone coins. Details, Manual Labor, Heavy Lifting. Location, Rikarisu Block 12, the warehouse with the red door. Duration, half a day to a day. Deadline, NA. Client, Dogamu of the Ort. Notes, I've got a ton of stuff to move around and not nearly enough manpower. Someone help me out, ideally someone strong. F. Task, Kitchen Help. Reward, 6 stone coins. Details, dishwashing, carrying food, etc. Location, Rikarisu Block 4, the Footfall Restaurant. Duration, 1 day. Deadline, before the next full moon. Client, Shinitora of the Kanande. Notes, we've been getting a ton of reservations lately. I need some extra hands in the kitchen. If you're up for a little taste testing too, I'd appreciate it. E. Task, Lost Pet. Reward, 1 scrap iron coin. Details, find and catch a missing pet. Location, Rikarisu Block 2, Kirib House, Room 3. Duration, until the pet's located. Deadline, none in particular. Client, Misel of the Hoga. Notes, my pet vanished and won't come home. I'm using up all of my allowance money on this request. Somebody please help. And so something to note about these postings is that in the client it says like Dogamu of the Ort or Shinitora of the Kanande. Basically, I'm pretty sure the Dogamu is like the client's name and Ort is their race. So that means that there's a race called the Ort, there's the Kanande and the Hoga. I could be wrong, but I think Ort might be one of those pig races. I'm not too sure. But I think we do see another pig race, and there's something related to Ort that makes me think it's them, but I'm not too sure. But anyway, just thought I'd mention that. That's interesting. And Hoga, obviously, we do know is some kind of lizard folk. So we just don't know what a Kanande is, unless maybe you guys know. Maybe it's a D&D thing. I don't know if this is like a race that already exists in fantasy or if it's like completely different. Not too sure. But as Dead End was looking at the postings, Eris wanted to slay something like a dragon, and Ruijerd actually finds a posting for that. It's an S-rank job that's to slay a dragon that resides somewhere north of the city. However, despite how strong Ruijerd is, even he advises to not fight against a dragon. I do suspect that Ruijerd could fight a dragon on his own, but because he has to take care of 2 kids as well, I feel like he just thinks that it's not best to take the risk, because you never know what'll happen. And so it's stated that the monster hunting jobs start at rank C, unfortunately, so they'd have to rank up to D in order to take those. But after being made fun of by Nokopara, they head out without taking a job. Soon enough, the sky got darker, much faster than normal due to the high walls that block the sun. But not long after that, the walls started to glow with a blue light. Ruijerd explains that those lights were magic stones that absorb the sun's energy and emit a light that lasts half a day long. They're basically solar-powered lights if you think about it. And the reason why that a place like Roa doesn't have these is because they're just very valuable and rare. When Kisharika was in the city of 400 some odd years ago, at the height of her power, she ordered to have those stones placed there and around her black castle, which can be found off in the distance. Eris, excited about it, wants to go and visit the castle, but Rudeus, feeling sluggish and worn out, he just wants to sleep. And so she asks what's wrong with Rudeus, and he just says that he's tired, but after a moment she gives up on wanting to go to the castle and says that she'll just have to be patient. Who could have thought that those words would ever come out of her mouth? I have to be patient. Eris is really learning, she's growing. But they settled for the Wolfclaw Inn, which costs 5 stone coins a night per person, and for an extra stone you get a free meal. Which I guess isn't really free if you had to pay for it, but, you know. However, it is free if you are a party of 2 or more, which thankfully Dead End is. This is an inn that's really catered to beginner adventurers. Rudeus then books a room for 3 days with meals and is left with 1 iron coin, 3 scrap iron coins, and 2 stone coins for a total of 132 stone coins, or 132 yen. Kurt then shows up and tries to hit on Eris before she walks away as he rips her hood. She then gives him a classic Boreas punch and kicks Bachiro in the solar plex and knees him in the chin, and lastly punches Gablin's chin. Did I say lastly? Because she then proceeds to kick Kurt's head like a football and stomp on him as he lays in a fetal position. All before she gets ready to just nail him in the balls. She's really ready to kill this guy, but Rudeus pulls her off and heals the Tokubaro tufts. And after dealing with the kids, Dead End has dinner and heads off to the room. But Eris sits on her bed, staring out the window as Rudeus focuses on his money problems and even thinks about selling Aquaharia just to get by. But after going circles about this in his mind, he falls asleep and sees Hitogami, who tells him to take the lost pet job. Sometime in the middle of the night, Rudeus wakes up to find Ruijerd leaning up against the wall, holding a spear instead of taking the bed, for some reason. And Eris is still staring out the window as she hugs her knees. But then Rudeus goes over to sit next to Eris as they have the conversation about how she's stressed, and that's why she got into the fight earlier. But as Rudeus wraps his arm around her shoulder and she leans her head on him, he notices something. Because she hasn't taken a bath in days, she's got some stank to her. And the problem is, he's kind of into it. And so he tells himself, gotta calm down, only a scumbag would take advantage of a girl in such a state, when she's feeling anxious and vulnerable. But then again, I am kind of a scumbag. But Rudeus then pats Eris on the head and heads to bed. But the next day, after accepting the lost pet job from Michel Kirib, Dead End heads to her house located in Rikarisu's Block 2. For Demon Continent homes, it really wasn't a bad looking place. They knock on the door to be greeted by a lizard girl who looks to be about 7 years old. Rudeus explains that they are Dead End, which kind of scares the girl, but she soon puts her faith into them to get me back. After a very childish and rambly kind of explanation of the situation, Ruijerd pats Michel in the head as she blushes. Dead End then heads off to find me, the big cat. But Rudeus kind of jokes around with Ruijerd as he acts like a crook, saying that he had the girl wrapped around his finger, to which Ruijerd kind of gives a modest smile. But then after continuing on with the joke, Rudeus gets smacked upside the head by Eris. Ever since the kidnapping, she's really never been fond of people like that. Which, yeah, understandable. Kidnappers, not really good people, I'd say. And so Rudeus kind of needs to know his audience when he tells jokes like these. But Dead End starts to head down the streets and alleyways to search for me, and while Ruijerd does have that gem which can detect mana, it's not like it allows him to tell him exactly what he's looking for. However, what's interesting, Ruijerd seems to have like exceptional sight and smell because he's able to detect like scraps and fights that have taken place without almost any markings on the ground, and he can even tell where the cat has been due to their scent. But eventually they make their way to the cellar and they find me, who is a giant cat, and they find many other animals in there as well. Just then, P-Hunter shows up and they restrain him and Ruijerd kills Roman. Except whereas in the anime and manga, Ruijerd kind of just slices off his head, in the light novel he stabs him in the throat as blood splurts out and sprays across the room. Little bit, is that more brutal? I don't know. But it's still brutal though. But we get a lot more insight on Rudeus' panic attack here. He's not scared because someone died. He didn't even care when Ghislaine killed the goons, really. And in his past life, he always rolled his eyes whenever there was some kind of vicious murder on the news, and he didn't even care about when his own parents died. What he was afraid of was Ruijerd, and how casual he was about killing. Trying to come up with any kind of argument that didn't sound hollow, he tried to convince Ruijerd to never kill unless he wants to further reputation of the Superds. And even if Ruijerd doesn't think that anybody's around, someone is always watching. But Ruijerd goes like, well, no, I've got the crystal here. I can literally tell if people are around me or not. But then Rudeus goes like, no, because there's me and Eris. We're still watching you. And Rudeus says that he doesn't want to be afraid of Ruijerd, but has the feeling that he will one day inevitably have to cross swords with him. But then Rudeus and Ruijerd pull Jalil aside to interrogate him, and they find out that they steal animals and turn in the reward for any lost pet jobs. During the interrogation, Rudeus acts all kind and gives a smile to Jalil, but then makes kind of a scary face accidentally. Like I said, Rudeus inherited like the two worst smiles on the face of the earth from Zenith and Paul. But after working out a deal with them where Dead End takes on the low F and D tier jobs, P Hunters will rank up and accept C and B tier jobs. The two parties will do the other party's job and turn in the rewards for the jobs that they took. And so afterwards, Rudeus then pulls aside Visquel to interrogate her on her own as well, to see if their story matched up with Jalil's. And thankfully it did, but she also noted that they were originally a legitimate business that found lost pets and returned them. However, one day they found a lost pet before it was posted and realized that they could make some extra money that way. But then Roman found out, and then he joined the group, and then he upscaled the operations, and then he also took a cut of the pay, and on top of all that, he forced Visquel to sleep with him. So they, especially Visquel, were happy about his death. And so the argument between Ruijerd and Rudeus kind of goes word for word like how it did in the manga. So let's skip ahead to them returning Mie to Micelle. Overjoyed, Micelle runs over to Mie and hugs it, and then she hands Ruijerd a silver-plated card that has some kind of ID number on it. In a translation of her childish explanation, when you turn this card into the guild, you get the reward money for the job. And in order to complete the job, the client has to put their finger on a certain part of it and speak, "Task complete." However, the card was already completed when she gave it to Ruijerd, and the reason for that is because she kind of just knew that Ruijerd would be able to find me, and she goes like, wow, there are good demons out there, huh? And Ruijerd kind of felt a little awkward about that, but I mean, I guess it's a good thing. But once they return to the guild, Nokopara, who mentions that he's a C-rank adventurer, bugs them again before heading off. Rudeus then turns in the card for his reward and heads back to the inn to sleep. The next day, as they returned to the guild, they saw Jalil standing outside of it. Rudeus talks to him quite politely, and both Jalil and Visquel are like kind of weirded out by it. And even Nokopara was the previous day when Rudeus spoke to him. He's just oddly just kind and polite. It's strange. But speaking of Nokopara, he was waiting for them in the guild hall. And after messing with them for a little bit, the two parties went over to the job boards to look for new jobs to take. And so we find out that there's like some jobs will say like harvest this thing or collect this thing. Those two are like very different terms, collecting and harvesting. Basically, harvesting is more so collecting plants and medicinal things, while collecting is more so monster related, like collecting pelts or fangs. And so in the vicinity of Rikarisu, Pax Coyotes, Acid Wolves, Grey Tortoise, and Great Rock Turtles were the best monsters to hunt to make a profit. You hunt Pax Coyotes for their pelts, Acid Wolves for their fangs, Grey Tortoises for their meat, although it's very heavy to carry, and Great Rock Turtles because they had small but very valuable magic stones inside of them. At the moment, however, Rudeus picked out the Pax Coyote Pelt quest. But outside of the city, Dead End started to slay a bunch of Pax Coyotes. But after a bit, Ruijerd tells them to stop as he grabs the corpses and piles them into a giant pile, I guess. He then tells Rudeus to use his magic to, like, blow the wind around so their scent gets spread so other Pax Coyotes can find it. The scent of blood and corpses and all that attracts monsters, especially more Pax Coyotes. Although that won't work on giant stone turtles. They're not really attracted to that kind of stuff. But after Eris and Ruijerd kill like 100 of these Pax Coyotes, Rudeus was the one made to skin them. And so after about skinning 70 of them, he couldn't continue and he swapped with Eris. And she could barely do like 30 before she gave up. But from there, it would take them multiple trips home, but they made quite a profit that day. However, with the remaining bodies of the Pax Coyotes, Ruijerd says that they taste pretty awful, so in order to properly dispose of them, you must set them on fire and then bury them. If you do nothing but simply burn them, other monsters will just eat them and grow stronger. However, if you only bury them without burning them, they'll come back as zombie coyotes. So you must do both. And it is not allowed to like purposefully spawn monsters. That's like a big no-no. But Rudeus, tired from skinning all these Pax Coyotes all day, he wants to have a free day off, but because of Eris's excitement, she doesn't want to, and so it's not like he could disagree with her. She's finally having like a good time. And so we then skip to 3 days later, and now Dead End is rank E. They swap rewards with P Hunters, giving them a 10% cut, as Jalil talks about how he and Visquel run a pet store during the day. He finds stray animals, trains them, and sells them. Supposedly his race, the Rugonian race, are able to domesticate basically anything, from a stray mutt to a proud woman warrior of the beast folk. And Rudeus is quite interested. But after that talk with them, Rudeus and Eris decide to go shopping. Eris picks out some lightweight but sturdy pants and a chest plate that Rudeus upsizes. But Eris then says that Rudeus needs a robe, which makes Rudeus realize the need part probably comes from another one of her adventure fantasies. What can I say? Eris is so wholesome. She's a murderer and has killed like dozens of people and things, but like she's just a girl living her dream, that's it. But anyway, they look through the magician robes made for hobbits because Rudeus is a tiny lad, and Rudeus notices that there are ones in red, yellow, blue, green, and gray, and the shopkeep explains that each robe's fabric has a monster hair woven into it, which gives them protection against certain elements. Red protects against fire, yellow protects against earth, blue against water, green against wind, and gray is just nothing, it's regular fabric. But because Rudeus knows all schools of magic, the shopkeep finds a dark gray robe made out of a Mackie rat. Not Mackie Mouse, mind you. And it's a bit big on Rudeus, but he buys it anyway because he knows that he'll grow into it. And so the total of what they've spent, including the 3 iron headbands, was about 7 scrap iron coins total. And so during the shopping trip, Rudeus sent Ruijerd to go spy on Visquel, and it turns out she and Jalal are actually performing their duties perfectly. And that day, actually, Visquel had an insect extermination job that she was doing. Because her race, the Zumeba, had a poisonous saliva that attracted bugs, this basically seemed like the job that she was born to do. And so after completing the job, she attributes it to Dead End Ruijerd and leaves. And initially, Ruijerd was angry at Rudeus for obviously not trusting these people despite working with them, since Rudeus asks him to spy on them. And even after this job, Rudeus still wants Ruijerd to keep tabs on them. And so Ruijerd asks if Rudeus even trusts these guys, like, at all, and Rudeus kind of just goes, of course not. The only people I trust in this city are you and Eris. And Ruijerd is about to pat Rudeus's head, but stops himself short. Rudeus may trust Ruijerd, but Ruijerd is starting to lose his trust in Rudeus. If that's the price that he has to pay to get him and Eris home, then so be it. That's Rudeus's mentality anyway. But then we cut to 3 weeks later as Dead End is rank D. And so the way the promotion works is like this. An F-rank adventurer, in order to be promoted to rank E, would need to complete 10 F-rank jobs, or 5 E-rank jobs in a row. From someone looking to jump from rank E to D, it took 50 F-rank jobs, 25 E-rank jobs, or 10 D-rank jobs in a row. The pattern was kind of the same for the other ranks, but just with much higher numbers. You could also be demoted if you failed 5 jobs in a row that were a rank lower than you, or 10 jobs at your own rank. You could not be demoted for failing jobs above your rank, however, but you could lose the privilege of accepting them. But at this point, Rudeus doesn't really need Jalil or Visquel, but he figured that he'd keep milking them for just a little bit longer. That'll come to bite him in the butt. But at the moment, Rudeus has 1 green iron coin, 6 iron coins, 14 scrap iron coins, and 35 stone coins, or 1,875 stone coins total, aka 1,875 yen, or aka just less than only 2 Asuran large copper coins, which really isn't a lot. But in the guild hall with Ruijerd and Eris waiting outside due to harassment, Rudeus and Jalil took a look at the job board and found an interesting job posting. B. Task: locate and defeat unknown monsters. Reward: 5 scrap iron coins, 2 iron coins if defeated. Details: find and destroy a specific monster. Location: Southern Wood, Petrified Forest. Duration: before the end of the month. Deadline: ASAP. Client: Belbero, the merchant. Notes: a large slithering creature was spotted deep inside the forest. Please identify it and destroy it if it's dangerous. And so Rudeus notes that the job itself seems a little suspicious because if you fail the job, you have to pay a breach of contract. But it's not really too painful to the wallet. So without much loss being taken here, Rudeus takes the job. However, in hindsight, he says that it might have been better if he didn't take the job at all. And so that is episode 10 of Mushoku Tensei, and my voice is killing me now. But it was worth it because there was so much more added compared to the anime. I mean, a lot of it was kind of pointless shit, but at the same time, there's still a lot there. God, that'll make it better, right? Oh my god. Oh, man. I want to sleep. But what did you think about the changes and additions made from the manga and light novel compared to the anime? Let me know down in the comments below, and give this video a like, subscribe for more Mushoku Tensei content, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.